So it works. Hello, hello.
Hi, everyone. Um, is anyone tired of hearing these kinds of discussions about? No, nobody is. We're going to make it snappy.
Then we need some people on the front row, right?
Yeah,
Want to see faces. Yes, it's working.
I can tell. I don't. I don't know. No, well, you need it. I think it's on. Oh, it's not on. Hello. Is that hello? Better. Okay. You're like such a professor asking people to come to the front. Hi everyone. So today my name is Rachel. This is Ismail. We're gonna introduce each other, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about the Cox's Bazaar beach work and business, and also maybe a little bit how to get a grant. Think of some questions if you have them. I have lots of questions. I'm going to pull up your bio here so I don't get it wrong. Ismail Ferdous is a Bangladeshi photographer based in New York City. He's a member of Agence Vue in Paris and a faculty member at ICP in New York. You can tell because he asked you all to come to the front row. Thank you. Raised in Dhaka, Ismail cultivated his passion for photography self-taught while attending business school. We're going to talk about the business piece a little bit. He's deeply interested in human interest stories that resonate with the nuances of the contemporary world. Some of his most influential works include a multidisciplinary project that addresses the devastating effects of the fast fashion industry on Bangladeshi workers through his documentary photos and films. His extensive work on migrations and refugees spanning 4 continents weaves narratives from Syria, Ukraine, Mexico, France, and Bangladesh. In the U.S., projects also focused on the topic of race and diversity through the stories of South Asians and a portrait essay on immigrants working in the meat industry. Ferdous has participated in over 30 exhibitions at esteemed galleries and festivals like this one, and museums, including Arles. His work appeared in the New York Times Magazine, Washington Post, Geo, NatGeo, among others. Ismail had the World Press Photo Award, won the World Press Photo Award, Leica Oscar Barneck Award in 2023, POYI, and the Getty Instagram grant. And then it's not in your bio, but you also got a grant from National Geographic for our COVID,
That's
your
true.
COVID work. So maybe like amend that a little bit.
I will do that.
Your turn.
Thank you. Thank you for introduction. Rachel and I met a couple of years ago at the National Geographic seminar. Actually, right after I received the COVID grant, I think, from National Geographic Society. It's my pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you, the organizers. I know that I have not been very communicative, but here I am, and it's a really big honor to be here in Slovenia. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Sabina. Thank you, Cyril. And thank you, Rachel, also, be here and like have this discussion. I would like to introduce Rachel. Rachael Strecher is Vice President of Storytelling Grants and Programs at National Geographic Society, where she leads programmatic effort to support photographers, writers, filmmakers, and other storytellers around the world. Prior to her time at National Geographic, she launched and ran the Aspen Institute's New Voices Fellowship, a program designed to bring expert voices from the majority world into global development discussion in the media. Rachel began her career as a photojournalist in the Middle East, where I actually didn't know. It's incredible.
Right now.
Yeah, where she covered stories for the Associated Press and other outlets. She has a particular interest in innovative media and expanding the roster of who tells the world stories. Thank you, Rachel, for being here.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. We should say that I think we were both on holiday, like right before this, but we did do our homework, right?
Yes.
Twice. So this is going to be good. I want to ask first, who here saw Ismail's presentation and show? Don't be shy if you didn't. This is important to know. Okay, but a few of you didn't. All right. So first, what we're going to do is look at some of the work because it's so fun to look at. So you're going to walk us through a little bit and talk a little bit about it. I'm going to have lots of questions.
Okay.
So go ahead.
This is a series. I will just give a little brief. This is a series called Sea Beach. I started quite accidentally, I would say, back in 2020. And I kept continue going back to that series, which actually I photographed in my home country, in Bangladesh. I've been living in New York City right now almost 8 years. And this series I have been, I created over 4 years, only in the winter time. So I'll show you the pictures before we get to the detail of it. Too fast. So here we showed 27 pictures out of many, and yeah.
Okay, so you go from some really serious, hard topics, building collapses, climate change, migrants, to literally cotton candy and fun in the sun. Why? Tell me about that.
I think it was necessary for myself. I realized that it is also a way, I would say this series of work, a body of work, was a refuge for me to kind of taking a break of from emotionally heavy lifted stories I have been working on. It's not that I feel like those are not important, but I think also I realized, that there is a lot of things I came to a realization working on this series that I felt and discovered photography even vastly, that the importance and things I can actually discuss about not actually being too serious about it. Meaning, I don't have to be a documentary photographer to tell a story that it's sad, it's bad, it's I was tired of it. It's myself. Yeah. I mean, at some point I would say yeah, the assignments were good. I've been doing a lot of work, but kind of inside me was I was a bit feel like I think photography could be more powerful than that. So I started as like you as a photojournalist, working with AP, and then make my, way to sort of like things I wanted to do.
I love that because I actually I find that we get a lot of proposals for our grants that are really, really sad. And I think there is this fallacy in this space, which is that it has to be sad and hard as a topic to be important. But I'm curious about whether you've seen Bangladesh depicted in this way and what the power of joy is I mean, this is so filled with joy in every possible way. And why that might be just as important as something that's sad and difficult.
It's very important because, I mean, as I mentioned, I kind of fell into this project, like accidentally I started. And um, then I started to realize that the nuances this series represent, it's sometimes more powerful than showing the disasters. I'm not comparing. I should not compare, but like it has its own power. For example, my long-term project on the factory collapse and fast fashion in Bangladesh, it's like I've been working on it for 10, 11 years now. In different scopes, from small documentary, long-form projects, social media projects, exhibition curation, and then there is a reputation like that. It was important to talk about workers' right, and like fast fashion and discrimination and exploitation. But at the same time, with this series, I realized that it has so many undertone nuances because it represents a beach culture. Because when there is a beach culture we talk about, there's a standard of Western beach culture, or mostly Western beach culture. How many we know? I mean, I as a photographer, I'm not familiar with seeing many pictures of Africans in Africa having vacations, or Indians or Bangladeshis, Pakistanis having vacation in their beach. So also like working on it, going back to this series over and over again. Of course, I mean, I live in New York, but that distance also gave me this, the Barca view to my to the place where like, which is somehow close to me, and I saw it in a very different way, and some detailed. I think was also these details as I think representation of a certain culture. Why we take out, like, if we take out the standard of beach culture or any culture, you take out the judgment of it. It's like you see it as it is. People ask me like, why people are wearing clothes in the beach, why people are, but this is how they do it. This is the like I did it with my parents when I went. This is the place I went to vacation with my parents when I was 5 years old. So, and also like telling the stories almost like we are not very seen and popular, or like not seen, or like popularly doesn't have the popularity. I mean, I said once in an interview that I would never be, like, no one would ever assign me to photograph the beach in Bangladesh. I know that. And that's why I think there is also, that came from a responsibility to do something, and showing the other side. It's like people always like expect pictures from Bangladesh, and I've traveled around the world, and people would ask me, "You're from Bangladesh?" Like, "Oh, I only heard about flooding in your country." So it's like, I think there are many ways of representation, and photography has that power, and we have to.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm curious about is like, so you grew up going to this beach, and then you left Bangladesh for how long? Like 8 years?
It's been 10 years now.
10 years.
Yeah.
How did this change for you coming back to this place and seeing the beach, both as a photographer but also as somebody who had been away for a while?
I mean, I think the photographer identity comes later, because I think it's me, myself, the interaction with the place and the people, and that will influence my ideas and like what I would photograph or how I would photograph them. Definitely, I mean, I have to be very honest that I would have never ended up making this kind of series if I was not living abroad. or away from this place, and like kind of this inside outside of a place and of a topic, seeing it in a, like, sometimes when you live in it, you are too close to it to see it. So as I mentioned before, so it definitely gave me a broader perspective and understanding of my own culture, what I grew up in. And also I feel like importance of telling stories, that how visual stories, that how it can be used not in the purpose of just uh, accomplishing a concept or an agenda, rather be really honest with your approach and see, and that would actually reflect in your pictures and works.
So you've said a few things that I have like 14 different questions. But one is kind of this insider outsider perspective. And I want you to, is it okay if you go to the image of the building that you showed me earlier today? So this is interesting to me because you showed me this and I actually didn't think very much about it, but it speaks to this inside outsider perspective where what I want to ask is how people have reacted differently within Bangladesh and more globally to this body of work.
I think it's also a bit surprising to Bangladeshis to this work, because I think this place is the most. So okay, so giving a little background of this place. This is Cox's Bazar. It's in the most southern tip of Bangladesh, 130 kilometers long, flat, shark-free, sandy beach, beautiful. Um, and it's also a most desired vacation spot for any Bangladeshis, any social class. We have 64 districts. I mean, and it's a small country by size, but the population is almost 200 million. So every social class goes there to have vacation. Um, what was your question? Sorry, I have to go.
It was it was how people inside Bangladesh versus
Yes, the outside. Yeah.
outside.
So when I was making these images or photographing this, I also wanted to photograph something that I've never seen before. That was definitely part of my aesthetic choice, and so Bangladesh has never seen this place this way. So they are also quite surprised to see this series of work, this body of work, and internationally, like everyone has this like huge confusion. Like, I mean, one thing I can mention, like one big reaction I got like in person last year when it at the award ceremony of like Oscar Bernach in Westler, Germany. So like there, I don't know, like a few hundred people was at the ceremony, and after that, like everyone was like really surprised. Like they came to talk to me. It was like, we never thought that those pictures were taken in Bangladesh. So it's like everyone, I think it took people by surprise, like absolutely. And then there's like, they feel like there's a familiarity, but there's also unfamiliarity with this. It's kind of unsettling, maybe for a lot of people, but not in a bad way. So, yeah, so it's a mixed feeling, and I actually I would find out more if I would do an exhibit in Bangladesh. I have not done an exhibit in Bangladesh, so it'd be very interesting to do an exhibit there.
Yeah, that would be great. So can you tell me a little bit about this image? Because it speaks to this idea of like who these images are for and how you embed sort of secret messages in some ways.
Yeah, so I mean, in my book, there are one more picture of these big sandbags. So these huge sandbags, they use to protect the shore from erosion, because still, like the sea level rise is like really going fast in Bangladesh. To give you a real life experience, the place you're seeing right now. They have a marine drive. They call it's like about 100 kilometers long. Go next to the sea, Bay of Bengal, and when I was a teenager, there used to be the cafe called Angel Drop, right over here, and next to the Marine Drive. And then when I came back after like 6 7 years, and I went to the same place, it's all gone. There's sandbags. So the sea is coming in. Like they already, I think they're already in like maybe like 150 meters already, like inland. So I've and I, this series I really didn't have any captions, and the book doesn't have any captions, because I wanted to keep these images like beautiful images how you see it, not really giving the clues directly. It's like the underline and the undertone. Every images have some visual clues, and it's actually not direct. So yeah, it talks about climate change and how it's been affected, but I really didn't want to say it, because it's visually evidence.
You're subtle. It's
Yeah.
um, yeah. I mean, so I want to talk a little bit about some technical things here,
Yeah.
because I think we have like some photo nerds here who might want to know how you did this. It's got this really specific tone, and I want to ask why, how, all these questions.
Um, so it started from a very basic feeling, like like, or very fundamental feeling, I would say, rather. Like familiarity and unfamiliarity, and knowing a place where I went for my first beach vacation, and coming back after, I have been living in the West for 10 years, and my relationship with beach has changed, and I went back there for work, but not to the beach since 2017, because 2017 they had a huge influx of refugee coming from Myanmar, Rohingya refugees. So I was photographing for different newspaper and magazines, and flying from New York to Cox's Bazar to photograph this refugee um, um, crisis there. And Bangladesh received at that time about 1 million refugees within a year. So I was going back. I was photographing for different newspaper magazines between 2017 and 2020, and I'm giving a backtrack. So to
I should have asked you these questions
it's
in the
okay.
beginning.
It's
So.
okay. It's okay. So 2017 and 2020, and one of my last assignments at that time was for Geo magazine, and I was photographing a WFP employee who was in charge of 1 million refugees food. So there's a big story for on her. But I had a couple of days break in between my assignments. So I went for a walk with my assistant in the beach and started photographing. And this is actually, I mean, one of the first pictures, also this one. I made. And I used a light, artificial light with the mix of sunlight. And to come back to your question, like the aesthetic choice was, the tone was to really, like when I arrived at the beach, I had a cultural shock. Like I have been coming between 17 and 2020. I was not really celebrating or enjoying the beach, which actually used to be one of my most favorite vacation spot growing up in Bangladesh. So I had like a little cultural shock living in the West, coming back to my originality, like original place for vacation. So I think the aesthetic choice of like the light and the tone was actually transcending my feeling towards the place, like really unsettling in terms of, it's like familiarity, unfamiliarity, and it's kind of like a lot of people say it's like it's a bit floaty, you know, you know, it's like in the confusion, and I chose a certain kind of light and tone, but then there's some realization in the middle of the project. Is like coming back to the point, the representation. We are often used to the color of, like the pictures coming from Bangladesh, India, Africa is like yellow, contrasty, warm, almost stereotype and expectation and really bright colors. I mean, the colors are bright here, but like I also chose a different color palette because that was resonating my feeling. So I only photographed in the winter time because the light is softer, and also only 2 hours a day between 11 and 1 p.m. So the light is consistent like throughout the series.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting how disciplined you were. And the metaphor I like to think about sometimes with this kind of thing is sometimes when I'm cooking for a friend and they're like vegan and gluten free, and I'm like, ugh. But then you come up with something really interesting, right? Like the rules and structure can sometimes create something sort of magical and different. And the fact that you kept it consistent really meant that the body of work holds together. And to that point, I'm going to let you guys ask some questions soon because what time is it? How are we doing? We're okay. Um, but so what we're going to do is I'm going to start to ask a little bit about the business. You guys are going to ask Ismail some questions. He's going to ask me some questions because we're going to start talking about like money, which is fun. So you've sort of like in this body of work, what I feel like I've noticed is you've shifted from kind of journalism to documentary towards something that's still documentary, but it's like really art, right? And it's like it's this voice that you're displaying in this new kind of way. And I'm curious about that process for you and how intentional it was to start to say like, here's a style that I'm using. And this transition into the art world a little bit, which I think you're making very successfully and is not simple to do.
I think I always wanted to do it, but it was difficult because, as a freelance photographer, especially in editorial and documentary, it's very difficult to like really take some slower project and um, things that will not really pay back right away. Um, and I have been kind of, I would say, like plodding since 2019, but I think 2020 was a good time. It was like the pause, like I had time to really reflect on things, and take time to make images. That was not really f- like fast food, like fast production. Um, I think it's a process. It took me a few years to really like slowly find a way. I really don't have a like a recipe to share, but I think I had it back in my mind, and still I have to take assignment. I still take editorial assignment. I mean I have to, but also kind of finding. This is hard. These kind of things to do. Like it's hard to make for an assignment, for an editorial work, or like a project you were assigned to do it for. So I think this is always on the side. I was doing on my other assignments and work, and I was also building this. I was saving money to go back to this series end of the year in the winter. Finding different ways to. I never ask anyone for an assignment for this series because it doesn't make any sense. So keeping it aside, and first 2 years I would just spend it money on it, without actually really thinking of any return right away, because I think as a business model that's actually not functional to think about. Because why? Because this kind of series takes time to develop and grow. As you said, the artistic approach bringing into photography and image making, it doesn't happen over time. And also things has to be seen and matured and understood. I think it's still I'm in the process, very much so, very early. Uh, and the intention always existed, but I didn't have space or opportunities or financial resource to just, I'm gonna just take a project and do nothing and work on it. So, and even with this series, first 2 years, like I didn't publish or sell anything. But on the third year, like it's the most published series in any magazine ever. Like whatever I made in my career, like it's the most published series before even it won like Oscar Bernard. Of course, it got a lot of attention from that. I have to definitely admit, and thank you, Leica. So, but apart from that, it's also like something that I'm still growing with this.
Was it immediately recognized and successful? Did you submit it to a lot of um, exhibitions and things like that? And did you immediately get great responses?
Um, Definitely, it was appreciated, and a lot of friends, colleagues, they really encouraged. But I have to tell you, like, it was always, I think, first few years, it was always on the short list or like top 5, top 10. And inside me, I was like, I mean, it sounds a bit arrogant. It's or like but also I think I was like, people are still not seeing it. It's
They
like it's
didn't get it.
they
Yeah.
don't get it. It's like that was my inside feeling. And I would just keep sending the work. And yeah, it was just like I was like because I remember some friend would call me all of a sudden. It was like, oh my god, this is an incredible work you're creating. What? And I will release like one or two pictures, you know once in a while. And even like when it received the Oscar Bernac, of course it's a great exposure. But then people thought it's like only 20 or 25 pictures of the series, but actually it's more than 150 pictures, and the book came out with 93 pictures. So they're like, so I preserved a lot of pictures for the book. So when people come to see, like get to have the book, and they will have a completely different experience. Even a lot of, I mean, the exhibition pictures didn't make it to the book because it has a different narrative. I think previous conversation who joined here, there was a question between exhibition and book. I think they're very two different thing and two different experience, two different. Of course, the photography has two different, like it gives it two different lives. It's like the experience is different, the physicality is different. So yeah.
I think, one thing that I hope people take away from this is that these long-term projects that you work on they're not going to pay your bills, but they may become what you're known for, right? And so there's ways of thinking about the value of this work that's different from immediate return. Did I get that right?
Yes,
Do you think that's
yes.
correct?
It's a process, and
Yeah.
it's like I almost see it as like when a filmmaker make a film, they like like one or two you will be like you will make in 10 years or 15 years or
Yeah.
2 years. It's not like it's like if you ask me produce another of this kind of work right away. It's no, it will
No,
take
it takes
time.
time.
Yeah.
Does anyone have questions for Ismail right now? Yeah.
But can we do it like before we go to the question? Can we do ask? Can I ask you like how do you fund this kind of project, or maybe it would be helpful for people because, you're the vice
Sure.
president of a storyteller grant, at National Geographic Society. So,
I wasn't avoiding it. We were going to get there. I
but
swear.
I think we should.
Hold your question. Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
Maybe it'd be interesting to also I mean I'm sure there are like I met some young photographers here, and they have their personal projects, not only working on the on assignments. How do National Geographic Society fund not only photographer project, filmmakers, writers, and storytellers project?
Thank you for asking that question. So, National Geographic has been funding scientific work for over 100 years, right? They've been doing that for a really long time. And then they might sort of give a photographer some money to go photograph Jane Goodall. But it's only relatively recently that we started funding storytellers who had their own big ideas. And very specifically, we don't fund newsrooms, we don't fund large organizations, we fund individuals because we saw a real gap in that field, right? It's very rare that people fund individuals. There are organizations that do it, and it's really an important space. But we also recognized that more and more photographers were not working for newsrooms in that they weren't employed by them. And so finding funding for these big, ambitious stories and projects was really critical in the world. And so we have several levels. The two that I think are most relevant to this group are very simply named Level 1 and Level 2 grants. Level 1 grants are for individuals who are new to National Geographic Society. So it may not be that you're new in your career. Lots of our Level 1 grantees are actually quite experienced, but they're new to us. And so those are up to $20,000. Our level 2 grants are up to $100,000 and may be individuals who are already part of our Explorer community. The thing to know is that if you receive a grant from us, you become a National Geographic Explorer, which is like kind of a cool title. We have we have made sort of a shift. It used to be that we funded within our focus areas, which were big and wide open. It included wildlife and human histories and cultures and sort of a number, and space now is a new one. But we made the decision because people were often trying really hard and submitting incredible projects, but that just weren't aligned with what we wanted to fund, to start making specific calls for funding. And so even though I was often surprised and delighted, and we found incredible work that way, I think it's better and probably easier for the applicant now to go through these specific calls. The one we have open it's sort of like, I feel like it's a bit of a joke when I say it's more narrow, but it's called the Big Questions Project, and it's funded through us by the Templeton Foundation. And it's aligned around three different questions. One is, what does it mean to be human? Like I said, they're pretty broad. The other is kind of, what are the boundaries of the earth, going to highest mountains, deepest seas, true exploration in that way. And then the third is, what is the connection of humanity to the natural world? We're also going to be opening a call likely around fresh water. So if you have work in that area, that's something that's important. And I'm going to stop talking in a second, I promise. The three things that I look for, but are pretty often relevant no matter what grant you're applying to, are, why are you the best person to tell this story? And you may be the best person because you're demonstrating through your work that you're capable of doing that. So we want to see a really good portfolio. You may have a certain connection to the community you're documenting. And there's or you may have a particular set of expertise around the issue, but show us what that is. The second is your pitch. And this is where our program officers and I and others reviewing should sort of gasp, I want to learn something. I want to, after I read the proposal, go home and want to tell people about it. This is a high bar. We get a lot of applications. And so it's basically the same pitch you would make to an editor, but make me understand why it's important, why now, why it's kind of a new take on whatever you're talking about. We see a lot of this kind of same idea over and over again. So really separating what the project is about will be critical. And finally, it does have to matter to National Geographic Society. So do your homework, look at whether National Geographic, the magazine, has covered the work in the past and define how it's different, but also show that it's for impact, because we're an organization who funds storytelling for impact in the world. Help define your audiences, things like that. The last thing I will say, unless there are more questions about this, is something to understand about this work is, when you're funded through National Geographic Society, the magazine and the media company has the right to publish that work on a fee-free basis. What that means is it's really critical that you build your fee into your proposal and into the budget. Because if the magazine publishes it, which they have a right to do, you need to make sure that you're getting paid for this work. They may choose not to, and then you can take it somewhere else. I'll pause there.
I have a question, one more
Good,
question.
yeah.
So the power of, how would you connect the power of visual storytelling with also National Geographic funding projects? Like, if we specify with photography, it's like how it's important for National Geographic Society to fund projects which are like the powerful visual storytelling is creating impact. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I was looking at our title and like, are we going to talk about this? It's really important, and we believe as an organization that sharing stories that matter in the world truly does have the power to change it, and we can have that conversation about how and when, and it sort of connects back to the conversation Kiana was having yesterday as well, and sometimes thinking about when to tell a story and when not to, and considering to whom you're telling that story. We think a lot about audience, and we ask that the grantees do that as well. And so, while sometimes I think people expect us to want you to find the biggest audience possible, there's a lot of times when people will have a distribution plan that's a very specific, very small audience, and sometimes that has a much greater impact in the world than something more general and broad.
Thank you. We can go to the question, I guess.
I actually, believe it or not, have more questions for you. So, like, hold tight there. But does anybody have questions for Ismail or for me? Yes.
Hey, Ismail. I know your work pretty well, but I'm still curious because beach, it's a public space, right? But the scenes that you took and people when go there, it's still pretty intimate. It's either lovers or families. I'm just curious how you approach them and how was to work there, especially, working with the assistant and the light, and maybe us not knowing so much about Bangladesh. Because I know in China, if you would approach, it would be instantly like, smiling and ruining the moment. And in your shot, it's really, you can feel this intimacy.
Well, very good question, man. And good to see you here. um, so, when I said that I was kind of having a conversation within myself, well, before or while I was working on this series, uh, uh, it's true that, like, I like street photography since the beginning of photography. Like, I started photography, sorry. Um, but also, I was having a conversation within myself, like, I like to be discreet, but not completely kind of invading the privacy. That was like a self. Is it working? I want to show some pictures while I'm talking. Um, okay, you can manage from there maybe. So when I mentioned it earlier that when I photographed this series, I used a huge modifier light with the assistant. So my presence was very obvious, you know, and so the approach was street photography, but also like I didn't want to be invisible. I wanted to visible, and I also wanted to kind of get the reaction. I think that's also important. That when there is a camera, can we go like? It's like everyone like they saw me. It's like not it. Maybe they didn't see me. I have to be honest. Here, of course, there's like a, I met a bunch of people visiting. They're in a group, but you only see couple visiting from Pennsylvania. They're Mennonites, like Amish Mennonites, and yeah, it was very straightforward, and actually they were shy or laughing towards my camera. For example, this man didn't. He saw me, but he maybe really didn't see me taking this picture. He saw me walking around, and he's actually Chinese tourist. Here, like she saw me, she was picking the seashells. So it was just something that people post. There are a lot of pictures. I would not say like I don't have the pictures people doing this, but I think when you spend days, I think you can find some moments that are not really like it's like very confrontational. So yeah. So it's a mix of everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love this work because it's plays with perception and prejudices of your country. I think there should be more work like this around the world. Can you imagine taking this? I mean, can you imagine building like the next chapter somewhere else, or is there like a different vacation spot in your home country, or do you think you could go back to it? I'm just curious, you know, 'cause
Yeah, I
it's such
mean,
a
I
strong
had that
body
question
of
too.
work.
Yeah. I had that question at some point, and then I was like, no, I think I should stop. It's extending too much, and also I do not want to capitalize this series of work. I am waiting for what I'm gonna next interested in. I have thousands of interest. No, I mean I'm photographing beach, and I think I like to go to the beach. Yesterday I was at Bohin. It was not a beach, but I was telling Ida I couldn't stop taking picture. It's just so fascinating to see people relaxing. And one of the things I didn't mention, like I never ask their name. I never ask what they do most of the time. Like sometimes if someone will buy me a cup of tea because they're so interested about me. The reason I did that because I really didn't want to bother their vacation. And I already bothered them by taking a picture sometimes. Like, I mean, but also it's like the tourist police. It's like, so I also have the reference of mask and COVID. So yeah, I don't know. Answer to your question, honestly, I don't know. I love taking pictures in my vacations.
Yeah, I was asking if you like, are you the beach guy now? And um, I mean, I think it speaks to this question about like the way beaches are different around the world. And you called this beach sort of a melting pot. And I was struck because in many parts of the United States, where I'm from, beaches are melting pots, but in many parts they're really divided. And there's like this history of racism. And that exists across the world where certain people have access to certain beaches and others don't. And what I love about this series is it is like everybody from across Bangladesh, and also they're there truly to be seen. Like there is this interaction with you, but also like you don't dress in like your kids in matching clothes if you don't sort of want people to be like looking at them. These guys, they're in these great outfits, and that's maybe a little different from other beaches you've been to. I don't know.
Yeah, of course. I mean, but also if like absolutely, you're right. As I mentioned, it has its own unique culture. People show up in their best attire, but also it's a true melting pot of a culture within a country and class. It's a beach for all, you know. And then a very good point referring the beach in the U.S. And I actually did some research. We had a conversation earlier before we got on stage that like I was also researching the beach culture in the U.S. and there's a book called the Book of the Land of Others, or the land was ours. Sorry, it was about the black communities around the U.S. used to own the beach, but not anymore. And there's also racism and classism, and since in Bangladesh all the beach are public, so everyone has a right to be in the beach, anytime, and it doesn't segregate anyone. So that's I think it also shows the true assimilation or like sharing a common space for one common reason. Everyone was there to have vacation, to have joy. I think the joy is shared. So that I think also resonate even with strangers or people who are not familiar with this beach, but they can maybe feel from the picture, I believe.
Do you have any tips for this community around kind of how to build your business as a photographer in this space? I know that's like sort of moving us in a different direction, but I don't want to. You're good at this. Like you went to business school, and I don't want us to to lose that here?
I think I never used my business school skill in photography.
I disagree.
I think I'm too passionate and too driven, like too. I don't know. I like to do what I like to do, kind of mentality. Um, if it's, I don't know if it's business or not. Like I would say one thing. I think following your heart. I mean, it's a very generalized
I was
thing,
going to
but
say exactly what you said is a business tip. It's really clear
yeah.
when you read a proposal if this is something that's like strongly held in somebody's heart as something they care
Yes,
about, or if
yes.
they're just trying to shape it to what you're looking at.
Yeah. I think being genuine is very important, and that, I mean, you can be successful financially and monetary, like, yes, find your own business model, but having your own unique business model, I think being genuine and doing it from your heart and follow your vision is very important. I feel like trying to be yourself and being honest with that is very important because, as you said, you can actually read in between line when is someone having a genuine project or not. I believe in that is very much so as a business model. If it is,
Also, please learn to write a budget. That's my business tip.
yes.
People are so afraid of budgets, and we need to see it, but it's not that scary. You just need to learn it. There's a lot of so much information out there about how to, like, you all are really resourceful people who know how to do it, and it's like doesn't have to be complicated. I actually don't need to know every single detail, but for your own purposes in accounting, just learn to get a basic budget template and fill it out. I don't want us to leave this on that point, though. Does anybody else have questions?
I do.
Yeah.
Has the process of shooting a slow work like this, has that changed you as a photographer and the stories that you shoot for media? Does that make sense?
Of course, of course. I mean, imagine like spending 4 years with the project. I changed myself. A lot of things happened in my life, right? We went through COVID, or like I moved apartments, But like also making projects like that, of course, changed me understanding my work and myself. Definitely, my approach. I mean, I think I would say it's a growth. I think. I mean, I think it's constantly. It's an evolution. I think as a photographer, I evolved in 4 years. I think that's how it changed, influenced me, because I never think photography is just a mission. Rather, it's a journey, and someday maybe I will not be interested anymore, and I will just take another journey. But as of now, I feel like it's a journey, and I definitely grew with this series of work, and my work and my approach has changed for sure. How? I'm trying to give you an example. Oh well, a lot of people ask a lot of people ask me that, oh, can you do an assignment this way? And I politely try to refuse, because I also realize that different series, different body of work, different kind of aesthetic, and different kind of mood to set up the mood, because it has the joy and happy and lightness. Maybe I cannot imply this to something really emotionally heavy lifted, and making those choices clearly, I think I kind of started feeling comfortable working, like, since I have grown with this series of work.
I think we have enough time for one or two more questions. I
I have a question for you, Rachel. When you said about on the grants to think about the impact and the audience, how do you assess this, and how the work can be impactful, whether it's in the community, whether it's in a broader audience, in the same territory, at the same time that the project is being done? If you can explain a bit about that.
There's a real range in terms of the people applying to these grants of on the journalism scale, right? And I was, forged in journalism. I respect journalism as an agent of change fully. And so there are some journalists who feel very uncomfortable about drawing direct impact from their work. And I'm actually fine with that, as long as you're telling a story that matters in the world. And it's like I said, that doesn't mean that it has to be a sad story. I really look towards solutions-oriented stories a lot. Somebody who's really good at this is the person sitting next to you, Cyril. And if you want to look at work that embodies that, I mean, it's just look to Cyril's work. And so when I think about impact, it's often about articulating what the problem is, but also what the solution is. There are other individuals who are absolutely storytellers who try to work with more agency towards that change. And so anywhere on that scale is fine, as long as the story is one of import to the world, and to the issues that we care about as an organization. And the other thing that I will say is, at the very least, I ask that storytellers articulate how they're bringing the work back to the communities with whom they're working. That should be a just bottom line in what you're doing, if not sort of engaging them in feedback around how the work is affecting them and how they see it. So that's one piece of something that we're looking for as well.
Thanks.
I'm going to sum us up. I have like just one question that I'm really curious about. Why does the image on the front of your book sparkle?
Honestly, it was also accidental. So, so we did a couple of dummies. So I published my book from Shanghai. My publisher is from Shanghai, Imageless. And I was there in April. And before I arrived, they did like 2 dummies because we're in a tight deadline with the production. And one of the dummies had this sparkle on the image, and that resonates with the sea. So sorry, with the sand. So, and also the paper we have chosen is also kind of sandy feeling. So it was actually accidental. The printer did a. So yeah. So sometimes it's.
I love it. Okay, so I'm going to sum us up a little bit, what we talked about. Mistakes, accidents leave us with sparkly covers, which we like. So be open to that. Joy can be revolutionary. What else did we learn? A good business plan can be around passion, as long as you're true to your voice. I think those are sort of like what resonated with me the most. Ismail, did you have any like takeaways from our conversation that you felt were important that people remember?
As you said, like, I agree with you, is like joy is revolutionary, and actually truly following that, being honest with your vision, I think that's, I would say, our
Perfect
takeaway.
ending. Thank you, everybody.